made of red clays, and you just glaze over. Red clay is very porous, very fragile. So one of the things that they've been trying to do in time is just to enhance the strength of the product and create better looking tile and more resistant products. That's why we went from red clays to white clays, and now we're going to porcelain. Porcelain is more compact, but we'll talk about that later. But that's why all the factories are actually in just the one region. So Italy, Sassuolo, 400 factories in a 7-mile span. Valencia, Castellon, 200, used to be 200 factories, maybe 130 now, in a 10 miles radius. So that's 2 regions. United States, a lot of factories are in the Tennessee, Kentucky area because of the kaolin. Kaolin is stored in Georgia and Alabama, and it's trucked just to one place. Of course, once you have an industry in one place, the best thing yet is you have all the infrastructure around it. So you got trucks coming in and going out. You got people with knowledge how to fix equipment in case something happens, give you the glazes. So that's why the industry tends to create areas where they have all the factories.
Yeah. What is kaolin?
Kaolin it's a clay. It's a type of clay. It's very fine. It's very thin. And the reason being for porcelain, it's easier to get it more compressed and compact. So this clay, it's a typical clay. You see this one. Kaolin is the one that's the purest kaolin it is. You can get the whitest tile as possible. That's why you get the super whites. That's a lot of kaolin, very pure, but also very expensive.
Do you mind if we move this down a little bit
No.
so that you presented that way we've got you in the same camera angle
Sure.
for our feed?
Anything you want.
Carolyn, is that only available in certain regions?
The answer will be yes.
So is
United States is Georgia and Alabama. I think maybe somewhere up north in Europe. We're foreign the kaolin in Russia, Ukraine now. So it's a problem. Germany and Turkey.
none of it in Italy?
None of it in Italy.
No, that's true.
And which is the other thing is sometimes you wonder why materials out of Italy have a little bit more money than the others because we are tracking in everything. The raw materials back in the days used to be in that region. Now they're being tracked into that region.
And feldspar? Is that what feldspar?
Feldspar, it's more available as a product. So we got something in Italy, we got something in France. Spain has got some feldspars. Those are all kinds of clays.
Yeah, they're all kinds of.
Yeah, they're just all kinds of clays. There are clays, just clays is just the general concept of them. When you think about clay, you think about mud. Basically, feldspar and kaolin are finer grained, and what they do, they create a more compact product. So at the end of the day, and what we're going to be doing here, the whole process is made to take the water out of the pipe. So that's why when we say there's in the United States CTDA, they do have a pamphlet specifically saying that a porcelain can be considered a porcelain if the water absorption is less than 0.5%. So the idea of taking out all the water from the mixture. So now what we do to take out all the water from the mixture, we pour water, which is totally Italian, it's totally against everything. This thing that you see here, it's a grinding mill. What they do in a grinding mill, basically, they put all these components together. With 50% it's material, 50% is raw materials, 50% water, and it's a mill. You got grinders, so the idea of crushing the particles is the smallest particle possible, and to do that with water. So you got usually you have 3 chambers, or you have 3 separated mills, and it goes from bigger to medium to smaller particles. Again, the idea of just crushing all the parts and everything, and at the end, it's made with water. We do recycle the water. See, that's the idea. This thing probably is like an 18-wheeler. Big, just to give you an idea about size, because people just talk, think about, it's a mill, yeah, something that you can have in your house, like a KitchenAid blender. No, it's huge, it's pretty huge, and they're kind of noisy. They're usually at the back of the plants, where you have the raw materials, and people usually are not allowed to walk there because there's a lot of dirt. That's the part where you have the dirt, you have the water. The water that we use in Italy, it's all coming from private wells. We're not using community water. And everything is recycled 100%. So all the plants now are 100% water recycling plants. So that's for the green part of it.
Also,
Yeah, ISO, yes. It's every factory that's ISO 14001 has that. And I would say right now, ISO 14001 is nothing but an environmental management system, basically. So what they have guidelines that they have to follow to make sure that they recycle all the clays, all the fire and non-fire products, and all the water. And also the heat coming out of the TMS system, so they're recycling the heat in their own heating systems for the offices, for the warehouses, and here's an image of what they use for grinding materials. Basically, these stones are put in the mix, and they just crush the particles, the clays, the feldspars and kaolins, and they make it smaller and smaller, and then they get out with. And it comes out, it's basically, it's a muddy water. So you got 50% water, 50% clays, and what they do, they take this thing, this is a spray dryer. This is a forklift, just to give you an idea. So what they do, they drop the water here on top of it, and it's a chamber, and it's 100 degrees Celsius. So it's 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. And what it does, when you drop the water, it just evaporates. So at the end of the day, drop the water on the top, goes down, evaporates, comes out, it's just clay. It's powder. And it's this powder. So this is the basic component of porcelain, which is a composition of clays, feldspar, and kaolin.
What's the percentage of the ratio of equal amount of each?
Clay is probably 60%, kaolin 20%, the feldspar 20%. So clay is the biggest one. That's the color you get. You know, the back of the tile or glazed porcelain, that's the base. And depending on when you're pouring your clays, in Italy, usually it's either light beige or light gray. In the United States, you can get dark gray, and the dark gray color of the beige usually affects the tile as well. So you can see it does the product. Usually that's what's going to be getting. There's no colors in this. We're going to be talking about a different type of porcelains. I'm using my mouth, or yours. Let's see. We're talking about different types of porcelain. We're talking about color body. We're going to talking about true body. The powder that we saw right now is just a typical base. What do you have to do in order to get a color tile? Or yeah, perfect full body tile. So the color going all the way through. We need to add color pigments to the mixture. Pigments are nothing but pigments, so it's color. And what they do react during the firing process, and they color the tile, either on top if you're using just a double load or all the way through. In this case, every single one of these silos has a specific color. This is the Sant'Agostino plant in Italy. You see they got small bins here. What they do, they load the clays on the small bins, and everything is automatic. So it's robot driven. The robot takes it to the specific clay. The formulas are in the computer that takes clay to a specific press. So if you're doing a blue color, you're gonna get the clay from the blue silos, the black color. If you're blending two colors, it's everything is computer controlled. But again, it's not as easy as it seems. That's the other thing that I was saying before. Everything's gonna be, gotta react at the same time to make sure you got the color you want, the size you want, the texture you want, and being as flat as possible. It's a titan. Which is the other thing. Again, you look at the picture of the silos before. Here's another forklift, just to give you an idea about the size. So the plants usually are pretty huge, pretty big plants. Now, I was telling you that after the bins, or you got tubes going straight to the clay, to the presses. That's the platform of a press. The press is a huge thing. Now we're going to see a picture of a press later, and it's built 6 feet into the floor. Now they're going bigger. They got new numbers and everything. Of course, the larger is the tile. Now you got 48 by 48. The bigger is the press. Back in the days when we were doing 12 by 12s, yeah, well, right. Just to give you an idea about cost, 12 by 12, 8.3 millimeter thickness. You can press, it's going to be probably 6 punches a minute. Boom, boom. The 48 by 48, you got micron 2.0, 1 punch a minute. And if you're close to the press, it goes like, you see the press going down, the platform going down, and boom. And you can feel the pressure going down. The floor shakes because of the power. And to do a 10 millimeter, so a 3/8 of an inch thickness tile, you need more clay because you're compacting the tile. That's why it's usually more money. It's a slower process. You know, it all adds up into the final cost of the tile. But again, if you got a more compact product, the idea of taking out all the water, that's what you do during the pressing process as well. It's you press out the humidity. Keep the material as more compact as possible. You see, this will be the typical size of a lamp. And these are all presses in line. This is the Casa Grande Padana plant, where they have 12 presses, and usually one press feeds two, we call production lines, so glazing and kilns. So they can keep, well, the one thing is you always have to keep the kiln running. That's the one that never shuts down. So we're all depending on kilns and quantity. So that's why you have one press working and feeding the kiln, and then it takes usually 4 to 5 hours to change the platform, because the platform at the press, and we've seen that the press, you decide size and texture. Everything is decided at the press, unless you're pressing larger size, like you have in Micron 2.0, where you're pressing 48 by 48 and then cut into size, but that's a unique technology. Usually when you have a 12 by 24, it's pressed like a 12 by 24, it's pressed at the press, you have a texture finish, the texture is given at the press. So that's where you know, and if you're changing the product, you gotta fake out those molds, and it takes you 4 hours. So for those 4 hours, the kiln keeps going. You gotta find a way to keep feeding the kiln to make sure you're not wasting time. So the kiln is a lot of money. Natural gas, we're importing natural gas from Russia. Yeah.
Is everyone doing that?
Yes. Well, Russia and Ukraine, they are the biggest supplier of natural gas for Europe. That's why they have this power for European Community. That's why, you know, the war and everything was all about natural gas and oil, of course. And oil, natural gas and oil, yeah. So that's the one thing I was saying before, the size and the texture is actually giving at the size and texture is giving at the press. You see, these are the tiles, the way they come out, they're still green. So they are shaped like the tile you want to be seeing, but you can snap them easily. So they are compact, but still you can snap them. Something you will not be able to do once they're fired. After the pressing process, there's a vertical dryer. It's like a chamber the size of this room, where the tile goes in. It's 900 degrees Celsius, so you're looking at 1700 degrees Fahrenheit, and stays in the vertical dryer for 45 minutes usually. 40 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on the time. The material stays in kilns and vertical dryers depends on the thickness, the size, because the idea, again, is just to take out all the humidity. By the time the tile is pressed, and the time the tile is actually fired, the tile loses 7 to 9% humidity throughout the process. That means shrinks 7%. This is just the glazing process. So the glazing process initially was pretty simple. We call it the belt glaze, and when you have a single color, it was like a belt. You will drop the glaze on top of it. The tile will just go under the glaze, under the belt, and just get color all the way on the top. Ceramics, you know, are made that way. Somebody back in the days invented the screens. Initially it was one screen, and you had one guy with a squeegee squeezing the glazes on top of the tile. You're gonna have the same tile over and over and over and over. Then they invented the cylinder. So you have 3 different graphics And you're gonna have one repeat every 4th tile. So 1 every 4 is gonna be exactly the same. I remember we used to have a tile, we call it a chicken finger. We got the same chicken finger over and over and over. And that's always gonna be the biggest questions, like everybody wanted to get away from the repeats. In the natural stone, you do have repeats, but it's ranging. We wanna be like natural stone, that's the tile industry. So we were trying to get away from the repeats, the number of repeats. And that is why, before getting into the digital technology, which is one of the latest ones, we went to the protocol. Now, I have asked him, okay, trying to explain to you what happens with the rotocolor is going to be pretty simple. You see, that's the graphic development of one of the lines that we were having when we were selling when I was with Arizona Tile. It's called Pieta Latina. It's just a cross-cut fabric, and it's very simple. The size of this is 60 inches by 120. The tile was a 12 by 12. So you understand how many times that specific tile would just fit into that specific graphics. What do? We had 8 different cylinders, like this one, and I'll show you the images of the cylinders. We would basically break down the graphics into 8 different things. So in one, you will have just the basic color of the beige. In one, you will have the browns. In one, you will have the veins. And they are silicone-based cylinders. What they do, they are designed to hold the glazes inside of them and release the glazes when they go on top of the tile. Basically, the tile will roll. It's not this rolling. The tile will just, there's a conveyor, will roll and get different part of the graphics, so they all look different. As a second enhancement, back in the days, the roller will move sideways. So you will see the same graphic, but maybe on different parts of the tile. Yes, there were some repeats, but because of the movements and everything, it was very, very random. So we went to 1 every 350 pieces, which is more than a second. These are the cylinders. See? Every single one will have a different graphic. The tiles just go through below them, and you do have some of the, protocolor tiles, basically. That was not the latest technology, which right now is the digital technology, and we're going to be talking about that later, but that was, I think that United States made products are still made, a lot of them are made with this technology. It was just great. Again, very few repeats, good quality, good price point. Again, you see this is what we call a battery of 8 heads, 4 and 4. This is the Pantheon plant in Italy. And then we went to digital. You see those 8 heads? Now everything is here. And digital is like, layman's terms is like a digital printer, nothing more. So what you do, you take a picture of everything, you Photoshop it, because of course the one thing we do in the tile business, I do have an image, which is the most knocked off stone lately. This is the natural stone. It's called zebra gray. It's quarried in Italy, and it's beautiful, and everybody loves it. But what they don't like is the blotches, the dark blotches, and the rust. So what you can do with the digital technology in the tile industry, you take a picture of this, and you take out the blotches, you take out the rust from the image. So you have a product that you're able to take out what they call the defects from the natural stone and duplicate that same look into top of the tile. And then what you can expand the colors. This one only comes in that specific gray color. You can do a brown, you can do a white, you can do a beige, you can do an almond, you can do an ivory, you can do whatever color you want in that specific technology. Initially, like all the, you can go to Office Depot and buy a $45 printer, or you can buy a $4,000 printer. And you ask yourself, what's the difference? Definition and colors you can use. Initially you were able to use 4 colors. So yellow, cyan, and magenta, and work with those colors. You cannot do red with those colors. You cannot do deep browns with those colors. So what we have been trying to do is actually expand the number of colors. So now we're working with 8, 10 different color glazes. And those are glazes, so the old glazing technology and as well developed the new glazes because they had to go through sprinklers. And initially the sprinklers got stuck by the glaze, that's why you see the line on top of the tile. That's one sprinkler that's stuck. It's a nice long line across the tile. It's a brown tile with a white line. Beautiful. 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 Again, you got more, you know. The other thing that we have right now, and it's we are working. You know, I told you about the 60 by 120 before. Now we got 16 different graphic developments that are 60 by 120. And those are all images, you know, manipulated images with Photoshop that are put into the system. And the computer randomly picks up every image they want and puts it on top of the tile. So repeats, yes, it can happen. It can be one tile after the other. The repeat can be exactly the same one. There's no movement sideways, everything, but it's based on a random computer, you know, and with 16 images that we're using, with the size of the images, it can happen one every million times, but it can happen. I'm not saying it cannot, it just can happen. It's just the digital technology is that way. What we are getting with the digital technology, better definition than what called, because it's, again, and you can tell by the new products, you know, the definition, the quality, the new marbles that they are showing up, you see the veining. One of the limitations of the rotor color was basically when you were looking at the vein, the color of the vein would just bleed into the color of the tile. With the digital technology, that vein is very, very fine. There's no bleeding. If you have a calacato, if you have a statuary, the white, you don't want the gray of the vein to bleed into the white of the tile.
Could you show, now we have a glass product there, but that's kind of explains some of the visual and what it's talking about.
So basically, the rotor color will just bleed the brown into the parts by the vein. The digital technology will not do that, or at least should not do that. And this is where's the image? And that's showing you what you can do with the digital technology. When sky is the limit, you know, as long as you can put an image on top of a tile, and you can make sure that the glazes will not react in a weird way during the filing process, that's a digital technology. And these are all different types. That's a Bugatti, nice. Now, any question about the glazing technology? Any questions, anything?
What about the differences between the saturation of color compared to black and white, or you know, the grays and the neutrals? Are there differences?
Yes, there are differences.
It was my understanding that a white porcelain would be able to saturate the different colors compared to
a black porcelain, yeah, or a true body or a color body, definitely. You know, white, of course, helps the color to be to be brighter, definitely. The biggest issue that we have in tile with the white color is actually when it goes to the fining process, because of the fumes inside the kilns, turns to be ivory or beige or creamy. So what they are doing in order to get the best colors available as far as reds and brightness of the color, they apply what they call an engo, which is a layer of pure white glazes on top of the tile that they can, what we say, basically apply the graphics on top. So to get that saturation of color you can get on the white tile. Because if you use the same color just on the beige or light gray base,
it's not going to be saturated.
No. And that's one of the issues, like for the US made products, you know, a lot of the factors where they have their darker glaze, and it shows in the products. You know, you lose definition, you lose the brightness of the colors. Nice product, well made. It's just you don't have the same level of saturation of colors and definition of graphics you can have out of Italy or Spain or Europe in general.
Now, you can still have a saturation of color or a higher saturation of color if you do a glaze on top of a ceramic, a red body.
Oh yes.
Right?
Well, white body color right now, as far as digital technology, white body is the best one. That is why you see all the wall tiles, you know, and wall tiles, the calacatas, they've been there forever. It's just, of course, they're just suitable for walls, not for floors.
Right.
And sometimes it's just they're just better because it's easier to work with them when you go into installation, just drilling, wide body tiles, wall tiles, just a better solution. But wide body will be probably the best one. That's why the best graphics actually you see on wall tiles.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you to the kiln. The Santa Agostino factory again.
How long it is.
The plant is so big that people that work in the plant, they use bicycles. Some of them have money, they use carts, like golf carts. Football field, 100 yards, usually a kiln. You got 3 different sections: warming up, firing, cooling down. Temperature goes from room temperature, so you're looking at 60 degrees, all the way to 1300 degrees Celsius, so it's 2700 degrees Fahrenheit, and all the way back down to 60. Depending on the size of the tile, a 12 by 12 8.3 would be 35 minutes. A 48 by 48 3/8 of an inch will be probably 1 hour and 5. The idea of the kiln is take out all the water, so all the moisture. The tile during the firing process shrinks 7%. Calibration. A non-rectified tile, you have a caliber information. The one thing that Italy and Europe has been trying to do is just control the calibers, control calibration. So to control calibration, what they have every single one of these sensors you see here, it's a firing chamber. So basically every, I would say, every 20 to 24 inches of kiln, you have a chamber. They control humidity, they control the temperature, specifically in that part of the kiln. It's all computer controlled. Because a jump in temperature will affect the humidity and the moisture of the tiles, so the size.
Can you explain what caliber is?
Well, caliber is the actual size of the tile. We would say 12 by 12 or 12 by 24. In the tile industry, we're talking about a nominal size. Usually tiles are smaller than that, and the specific size is given by a caliber. The central caliber, and every single factory calls it in a different way. It can be number 5, it can be number 0. The central caliber is the closest caliber to the 12 by 20, to the nominal size. And it goes usually, right, all the changes that have been in the industry since then, it's pretty amazing because they're trying to get away from the rectification because of installation issues. A non-rectified tile is easier to install because you got a soft edge. So the installer will like the tile way better when they go into installation. It's easier, mainly in a country like the United States where installers are not as good as we have in Europe. And, they don't prep the floors. They want to go fast.
Can you show them the press and the rectification?
This one is a press factory edge. It's almost a new one. So you can see right now it's almost a straight edge. Back in the days, because the way they would use the punch would be at the press, they would go a little slightly diagonal, like a pyramid, something like that. Now with the new presses, they press upside down. It's almost straight. So you can actually install this with a 1/16 of an inch ground line if you're a good installer.
With a non-rectified methodology?
Oh yeah. Because back in the days, there used to be a slight diagonal to the edge. Now all the edges, the new
Where you see where it comes down, there's a little line, and it goes out, flares out again.
Yeah, that's why I was curious if you're trying to.
I would say in the United States, a safe number is an 1/8 of an inch.
Yes,
A safe number. But if you have a good installer and you want a 1/16 of an inch, you gotta then sign off. You have a good installer, you can live. We installed this with 2 millimeter thickness in Europe. It's feasible, but
Also, it depends on the foundation. If the
The
foundation is
Italian-
horrible, sometimes the installers will use that as an excuse.
as Eric said before, I'm giving you the information.
Yeah.
I usually say an 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah. So European made tile, I get it, but American made tile, I wouldn't recommend that.
So
Those 6
and what they're trying to do, they're just trying to control the actual tile size of the tile at the end of the day. So
Press tile.
it's a frisbee. So back in '97, when I started working with Flores, and Flores at that time was one of the top factories as far as technology and everything, we could get probably 50% in one caliber out of a production run. A production run out of 12 by 12, you're looking at 1 day of production is 70,000 square feet, just to give you an idea. 1 day of production in a 48 by 48 right now, you're probably looking at 25,000 square feet. Just to give you an idea about, why some, if you think about in your mind the cost of pressing and the whole process, you understand why sometimes it's just more money than anything else. Right now, we can get 75% in one shade, one color, because of all the controls we have in the kiln.
Right.
So sometimes, yes, and usually during a production, you have 3 calibers, 3 different shades. And usually they can work together. So one caliber up, one caliber down, you can blend them, 1/8 of an inch, and usually the difference is less than a 1/16 of an inch, so you can offset the difference in calibration just working with the growlers. So this is our, these are all the controls, all the sensors. The one thing is good, when you walk through by a kiln, the one thing you open up these little windows, you see hell inside. Hell. That's a nice picture, it's hell. These rollers are made of ceramic, and they need to be changed once in a while. They change the rollers, and the kiln is still going. The kiln never shuts down. Even in the summer, typical summer, August holidays, or New Year's, Christmas for Italians who say, we're doing maintenance to the kiln or to the plant. The kilns goes to a lower temperature, but they never shut it down. It's more money to shut it down and refire the kiln than to keep it at a very low temperature and then fire it back up again. That's hell. That's the image taken from the entrance. That's what tile go through. What happens during the firing process? Color pigments get out, so you get color. The glazes react, so you get the graphics. There are a lot of torsions because of all these different components working. That's where you have warpage, calibration, orthogonality issues, and everything. That's why after the firing process, we check everything, not by man, not by women as well, which are way better than us in checking stuff, by computer. Because you don't make sure that things are made in a proper way. When I've been to China, and the reason why the Chinese product is all rectified, they're using their own natural gas, and their own natural gas is very unstable. So they do have jumps in the firing process, and they have no control on calibration. The best way to give you one single caliber is just to cut everything to the same caliber. Technically speaking, and I'm giving you this information, and you use this information the best way you can. Rectified tile, it's a slightly weaker tile.
Is that just because the edge is brittle?
No. What you do when you fire a tile, everything is made to reach that 0.5% water absorption on every part of the tile, not just the top, the edges, the sides, and the bottom. You don't want the water to come in from below or from the side. When you polish or when you rectify, what you do, you open up the pores. So and I'm talking that this one can be 0.2. When it's rectified, you can go to 0.4. We're always talking about nothing, and the weak point usually in a floor system is the ground line. Because you have 0.1 or 0.2% here, usually on a cement-based ground line, you have a 2%, unless you're using epoxy. So that's where the water is going to get in, and that's going to get in from your sides, basically. That's why usually rectified tile, it's slightly weaker. And that's information for you, sometimes a good selling point when you're competing against a rectified tile and your tile is not rectified.
Because we don't like grout.
Keep that in mind. And that's, again, that's the same picture. The first one was a close-up of the kiln. That's the entrance. This is the specific machine. It's called planar. And it's a laser beam, and it calculates orthogonality, size, and planarity of the tile. So with this one, we know exactly if the tile is warped or it's within the standards. Warpage is a big issue. And all tiles are warped. Don't get me wrong. You know, the torsions in the fining process, all tiles at work. The ASTM standard, which is the same as the European standard, calls for 0.5% of the diagonal. That's how much it can be worked. Allowances in the plants are usually 0.2, so we are more strict than the standards. But usually, when you have a lipping situation, it's a combination of the tile being slightly warped and the floor being not flat. So it's a combination of the two. It happens. It's nobody's fault. At the end of the day, you always, you know, when you're in those situations, it's always about your tile is cold or warped, because that's what they see. But what's below the tile, nobody knows. So usually we end up paying for that. usually.
We try to explain that a lot between the differences between ISO and ASTM, and that a little bit of warpage is normal. It's an actual product, so it comes with the territory. So.
There's only one technique that's actually you can guarantee that your tile is totally flat, and it's extrusion.
Oh, yeah.
An extruded tile, because the way they are manufactured, that tile is not perfectly flat. You can flatten it with weight, so it's slightly flexible. You just push it down to be perfectly flat. So that's the one tile you never say this is not warped at all. But yeah, tiles are, you know, usually it's a combination. And of course, if you think about the 0.5% of the diagonal, the bigger the tile, the more it's going to be bowed or warped.
Just a real quick point too about Pantheon and first quality, where he was talking about being 5%, but they're basically first quality, and their standards are more stringent. And at 2%, that's what we hold our manufacturing partners to. So that's when you look at Pantheon tile coming through, they've met that high stringent quality standard.
At the same time, the same machine gives the information about caliber. Since they calculate the orthogonality, they're going to give to the specific tile the information. So after this control, every single tile will go there, and the computer will know which tile is going to be what size. It's really amazing when you see this. This one is the visual shape check. You know, they try to do this by computer, and it's what we call the selection. You know, they try man, impossible. We have officially the attention span of a permit. And if it's a Monday, it's gonna be like 1, 2 times. So I was soccer yesterday, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 30% of men are colorblind to a certain point. Not totally colorblind, but are colorblind to a certain point. And they work shifts, these females, these women, they work shifts of 40 minutes. And in 40 minutes, depending on the size of the tile, if you're doing a 12 by 12, you probably are looking at 300, 400 tiles that all look the same. And what they do, they have a board in front of them with a shading, and they have a clicker. They give every single tile a shading information. So the tile comes in front of them already with a caliber information, and they click with the clicker, they give a shading information. That's when you have the shading caliber information all in the boxes. It's given by the eye of women.
So we must have had men doing those color shades on it.
Probably. Oh, hey, I could not, personally, for me, it would be impossible just to sit there for 20 minutes and just look at so many tiles and say, oh, this is a different color. And you're talking about one shade off, which to us is all the same. You know, beige is beige, brown is brown. I'm a salesman, I'm not a designer.
Yeah.
And you can tell this is San Agostino, and then everything, you know, the tiles with the shading caliber information, they're stacked by shade and caliber. And once the stack is full, so you got 7 pieces, 6 pieces, depending on your packing information, it goes straight to the packing machine. The box is usually right now it's wrapped around it. It gives you the shade information. Actually, right now it's got more information because you got letters that identify the person that's done the selection, the shift, the hour, and the specific production line. You got a lot of information right now in those boxes. That's why when you have a claim, usually one of the most important thing is get me the box information. Get me the lot number, because there's a lot of information for the factors right now in that specific number. You know, they know exactly what time the tile is being manufactured, what day, what time, who was in charge, or who did the selection. We know everything at that point. So we can try to understand what happened in case there's some sort of a claim or complaint. This is called a palletizer. What they do, they wrap around two boxes per, and they put them on top of pallets. Once the pallet is ready, there are robots. This is a typical robot that you see in a plant. They are either guided by infrareds or they got magnetic trails on the floors. And just you see, back in the days, back in '97, there would be probably 50 people in one plant. Now 5, because everything is just automatic. Just a lot of, they are taking away the human error, which is only the sales part of it now. But just taking out from the production. So just to make sure the product is as best as it can be. Take it to the what we call the palletizer, the wrapping, the dust, and they do pallets and everything. Everything is ready to be on a container and come and see it. That's it. That's the end of it. Any questions?
Well done, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good on there?
Got any questions? Anything?
Questions? Britton, if you want to stop that one and,
I think,
anybody need a break?
I was
So we're not done now?
No, we got other stuff there. So.
gonna say